think the tenor of the symposium is going to take a bit of a turn. And so we're going to have this part of our discussion, this panel, again, developing a new voting rights strategy, is going to feature three discussants. Willie Ricks, again, representing SNCC. Connie Tucker will talk about the Tuskegee Institute Advancement League, and SNCC with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And then John Hulett Jr. will talk about the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. I do also want to say there are a number of people in the audience who I think could contribute to this conversation. I think Dorothy Frazier, who this is actually the last of three symposiums that the National Center has sponsored leading up to the 50th anniversary of the 1965 Voting Rights Campaign. And our first symposium, we dealt with the scholars of the movement. We had a number of scholars who've written on this particular time period and episode talk about their scholarship. Then the second symposium we had dealt with the students who were involved in the movement. And Alabama State students, there were a small handful of student activists at the time who really spearheaded Alabama State's role in the voting rights campaign. And Dorothy Frazier is one of those students. I'd like Dorothy Frazier to stand up and listen. All right. And she has a relationship with a number of people on our panel, but she's been a long time movement person. And we want to acknowledge other folks in the audience who have contributed in various ways to the modern civil rights movement. Ms. Torre, Ron Sanders, you just... Willie Ricks has disappeared again. He went across the street to the barbershop the first time. You got to go get him. And so he's disappeared once again. But the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, we touched on this conversation briefly in our first session. I think Reverend Willie Bolden talked about the SNCC's early involvement and the decision to come to Dallas County, to come to Selma. And of course, the Dallas County Voters League and Reverend Reese, who worked closely with SNCC during that time period. And so we wanted to have a conversation with not only people from SNCC, but also those organizations that work closely with SNCC. And again, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was a student-driven organization, not only college students, but also high school students. And they organized students throughout the nation, but in reference to the 1965 Voting Rights Campaign, they organized students throughout the region, particularly the Black Belt region. And so I'd like to start a conversation with Willie Ricks and have him talk about how he gets involved with the Voting Rights Campaign in Central Alabama and his experiences with SNCC, organizing in the area, and how the movement evolves from his perspective and from the perspective of SNCC. So you have about 10 minutes for brother.
No problem. I didn't bring my wife with me, so I'll be talking a while. First, I want to say that when I was in Africa, I gave the white man his name back. Because you know these names we have are slave names. And that my name is Mukasa Dada. Mukasa Dada. And it was given to me by Idi Amin Dada, president of Uganda. Myself and Stoker Carmichael and Kwame Ture, we was the guests of President Idi Amin in Uganda. And proudly knowing him, and I proudly take the name Mukasa Dada. And all of us should work on giving them their slave name back, because these names came from torture and murder. first I would say that, so Mukasa Dada, not Willie Ricks. Secondly, I was in SNCC. SNCC was an organization started out with basic, most of the college students in Charlotte, North Carolina after the sit-in movement. Ella Baker pulled together a contingent of people, and Ella Baker had been working over here in Alabama, and Ella Baker was the one that really put SCLC office together in Atlanta, and she posted up, put it together, and showed Martin how to get a staff and all that. At that time it was Martin, Ralph, and YT, but she put it together, and then she and Martin King called the students together that was sitting around the country and called them together to get organized. And Dr. King paid the bill for them to come together. But then when we got together and formed the organization, Ella Baker advised us that we should have our own autonomy and form our own organization. And from that meeting, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee came out of it. It was called SNCC. Now, SNCC, different from the other organizations, we didn't see ourselves as leaders. And we were based on most of the students. And that we saw ourselves as organizers. So everywhere the SNCC traveled, in every town, we would go in, we would organize the people into an organization, or join a local organization or movement that already existed and put together an executive staff, and we saw ourselves as assistants. And then we would put together the youth movement, go and turn the schools out, or organize around the junior high school, and I used to like to operate around elementary schools, and sometimes march little kids to jail, and that would really get their mamas involved and daddies involved too. And I was pretty good at that. And then SNCC would organize and have local leadership, and when we came to Selma, we met Ms. Barnes and Mr. Reeves. They were already ready to go, and they put together their organization, Dallas County Movement, and we served as technical assistants to that. And we faced all kind of terrorism, not just in Selma, but SNCC had about 200 projects going at any given time. Wow. Because what SNCC would do is send 1, 2 people to different cities all around, Black Belt areas all around, and scatter us out. We would go in there and we would start organizing. And so we had probably 200-300 projects going at any given time. So we were not leaders. And then you had, Dr. King was a great mobilizer. And SNCC, we saw ourselves as organizers. Wow. So we created and worked with the Dallas County Movement for 3, 4, 5 years, or the Albany Movement. And once we got to a certain height and we felt that we wanted to bring more national attention to it, that's when Dr. King was called to Albany, to Selma, and came in and and they marched across the bridge. I think shortly after they got there, and they were beat down on the bridge. It gave national attention to it. Now, at the same time, SNCC had organized the state of Mississippi under one of the leadership, Mr. Vine, and Fannie Lou Hamer is the name that we know that grew out of that. But there were many, many names. Maybe Evans was part of it. And that in Mississippi, we had the murder of many of our civil rights leaders, many. And Cheney, Swan, and Goodman, to name a couple of, but there were many others. There was over 75 church burnings and all acts of terrorism. And these acts of terrorism were not just in the state of Mississippi, they were in Alabama or wherever we would go. Now, one of the things we did after we were sitting in, direct action we called it, sitting in, we said, well, we need to vote these people out of office. And we said we need to vote them out. That's on voter registration. Some SNCC people thought that was a cop-out because we wanted to direct keep attacking. And then when we had the voter registration, they started throwing bombs and dynamite and shooting, killing, and all kinds of other things. And we began to go on and we weren't just fighting on voter registration. And our movement should be interpreted that just voter registration. We were fighting for slaves to get out of slavery. We were hungry, we were sharecroppers, we were slaves, we were being beaten, We lived in the worst conditions, and that's what we fight for. And we don't want to just be interpreted as just on one little voting thing, because even places where you've got all black people in office, we still live under the worst conditions. You understand? And many of these people that jumped in office, they ain't did nothing, you know, what we call neo-colonialists or probably Uncle Toms for the most part. And the Democrat Party, or the Republican Party, have no respect for us. And if we're going to have respect, we need our own party, our own organization, where we can have power to take what we want. And we have to remember that we ain't got nothing through the agreement of no President Johnson was a racist pig. Make no doubts about it. He's a white racist that hated the movement. Kennedys hated Martin Luther King. They didn't want to sign the FBI on them to spy on them. They were not our friends. Everything we got, we took it with our blood. Everything. And today, we're still slaves, and we must continue to fight, not just in Alabama or the United States, but we got 500 million people in the Caribbean, another almost $500 million or close to $1 billion in Africa and other places in the world. What we want to do is unite our people and build a strong force and use Africa as our base. Because Africa, my time's up, and Africa is the richest continent in the world. All the diamonds, gold, and oil. And if we're going to find real freedom, we got to take Africa back. And if we're going to find real freedom, we got to do like the Chinese did. See, the Chinese, they one time were poor and hungry, couldn't vote. They took China back, and now they're one of the most powerful forces on earth. So the question is, are we fighting for real freedom, or are we just fighting to beg the slave master to treat us a little better? Thank you very much.
I think that's an important discussion and an important window into the evolution of the movement and the different approaches in the movement. Certainly, SNCC represented an evolution. They started under the auspices of the SCLC. James Lawson wrote the SNCC Constitution, and so the idea of nonviolent and civil disobedience was weaved into the very fabric of the organization, but it evolved over time. And so by the time you get to 65, SNCC is looking towards a black nationalist model and looking towards an international model. And so I think what Mukasa Dada, and actually when I talk to Mukasa, I do call you Mukasa Dada. And I say Willie Ricks for the purposes of this program because many people knew him in the movements Willie Ricks. But I do respect your given name, your assumed name. But so that evolution, and I think it's important. And one of the reasons why we had 2 panels was to, in some way, to illustrate the different approaches. One important, and you see in our first panel with SCLC, but then in our second panel with SNCC and the organizations that were affiliated with SNCC, because when you look at the idea of independent black organization and organizing, particularly independent black political parties, SNCC implemented that in Alabama, in Lowndes County, and in Mississippi. And so we wanted to have some illustrative representation of that. And so I guess our next conversation, well, I'm going to first turn to Dorothy, Connie Tucker. Yes, Connie Tucker. And Connie Tucker is going to talk to us about, she was a young person in Tuskegee, and is going to talk to us about the Tuskegee Institute Advancement League and the movement in Tuskegee, and her perspective on that movement and its role, its connection to SNCC, and its role in the community and its agenda. So if you could talk a little bit about that stuff.
Good morning. My name is Connie, but Connie and Walla, my name when I moved and lived in Gambia, in West Africa. They said, you don't need to change your name, you already got an African name. I kept the spelling the way it is because I was away for so long, people wouldn't have been able to find me. So that's why I kept that spelling as it is, but I think I probably have to hear Mukasa. I need to go and do something about go back to the early spelling of the name, that the way they spell it in Gambia, West Africa. I want to be clear, I was not a member of TIAL. When I grew up under Wendell Paris and Selma, we were neighbors. They played football on the field in front of my house. By the time the struggle here occurred, I was living in Florida with my mother. I was just doing little stuff like trying to integrate facilities down, public facilities down and voter registration. But we didn't have the kind of organized movement that occurred here. But I know the struggle because I heard it all my life. And I was mentored by Willie Ricks and Kwame Ture. So I've been in the movement all my life. And I want to just start off by saying that the true heroes in my heart of this movement are the young people. Those young people include high school students and college students across the state of Alabama and really across the world. Across the United States, because they sensed Tuskegee and Alabama State played the lead. But in actual fact, students came from all over. Hank Sanders, I found out in the research, came from Talladega. Came from Talladega. So the students really did throw down. Now I'm going to try to concentrate on Macon County for a minute, but I got to go back to Selma because a lot was left out, and that needs to be said. The TIAL was formed in 1964 in Tuskegee. And TIAL's organizing really concentrated in the rural communities. The Tuskegee Civic League, I'm forgetting the name, Civic Association, was a more conservative organization. They pretty well took the strategy of using the legal system for change. And they had major victories. In fact, I think it was mentioned briefly, the first major gerrymandering case really came out of Tuskegee. There was a bill that was enacted by the head of the White Citizens Council, who was a member of the Alabama legislature. It was called the Alabama Act 120, which basically gerrymandered black people out of the city. And the Tuskegee Civic Association filed a lawsuit, and I believe, of course, that would have been Fred Gray, who filed that lawsuit in Tuskegee, and they ultimately won at the U.S. Supreme Court level. I grew up in Tuskegee and Sarasota, Florida. But they also used another tactic that was very, very successful. It was an economic boycott. They boycotted all of the businesses that did not support voter registration for black people there. It was very, very successful. But Tuskegee had a class system. It was a caste system too. If you didn't work for the vet school, Tuskegee, if your skin was a little darker than mine, you got treated differently in Tuskegee, and that's just a fact. My mother was the first brown-skinned Miss Chandler's Children's House. Okay, she was the very first one. When my sisters and I were ready to go to school there at Chandler's Children's House, they had a place for me. I'm light-skinned, but they didn't have a place for my other brothers and sisters, my other sisters who were darker skinned than me. And so my mother said, of course, she took us all to Lewis Island to go to school. But let me say very quickly, because the whole story is in this book right here. And we're going to keep these here myself to you all today, and we're going to leave a box of them at the bookstore so that y'all can get the story, because unfortunately, the full story still, this is not a full story, because Attorney Say gave me some history that I didn't know sitting here today. And I hope y'all got a recording of what he said, because we really need to document that part of what he said. They came together, the students. They worked very, very closely with SNCC and Tuskegee, with TIAL. And many of the Tuskegee students really became staff of SNCC. Sandy Young became a staff. That's right. Gwen Patton eventually became a staff person of SNCC. There were several Tuskegee students who became SNCC staff. But let me just tell you what people really might not know. TIAL sent SCLC a telegram saying that the students who wanted to demonstrate on the Capitol, SCLC's response was wait for the main march. But Jim Ford was there. They were meeting with SNCC. SCLC and SNCC were meeting when the telegram came. So Jim Ford slipped out and immediately sent a letter to the students in Tuskegee and said, we're prepared to support you in any way necessary. So they immediately went to Tuskegee and helped those students organize that demonstration. South is about 1,700 of them, because TIAL had almost over half of the student population at Tuskegee as a part of its organization. So they gave them paper bag lunches, bologna sandwiches, and apples, and they came over here. And when they got to the Capitol, they met up the same posse that had beat the people on Evans Bridge. They blocked, they boxed them in. They didn't get any support from churches. Nobody gave them support. So that once the students got over here, Willie Ricks went, the Tuskegee students got over here. Willie Ricks came to Alabama State campus and organized Alabama State students there. There were thousands of them. So the hardcore, about 300 students, the hardcore refused to leave. They stayed, but they couldn't. If you went outside of that line, the Alabama troops wouldn't let them back in. So, I gotta write that, I wrote it here, so I say it right. They couldn't go to the bathroom. Nope. So the students had to literally urinate in the streets. Yep. And they dubbed that demonstration a pissing mass. A pissing mass. Oh my goodness. One thing I didn't say earlier, because I'm scared, I've really not been able to get enough sleep yet since Selma rose too. She's been out there marching. When the Selma Montgomery March, it's amazing. How many people have to fight for our rights? I am so honored to be associated with her. But one thing y'all need to know about Alabama history. The Alabama Democrats, all in him. The Alabama Democratic Party chose the white rooster as its emblem. Remember Reverend Reese? And the reason they chose the white rooster because that was the emblem of the KKK. And on it said, on the emblem it said, white supremacy for the right. That was the emblem of the Alabama Democratic Party. And thus you understand why the folks in Lowndes County made a decision to form their own independent party because they knew they could not get justice through the Alabama Democratic Party. There's so much to be told, but I have to tell you something. I want you all to search online for the bill, something that's called the Bill of No Rights, with Godwin. Godwin is spelled Godwin. It is a complete assault on the Selma to Montgomery March, and it's the same dirty crap that the KKK put out during the Selma to Montgomery March. I don't know, Reverend Bowling, if you saw the stuff that the KKK was putting out during that time. Dawn Rose mentioned that the KKK was there, but what she didn't tell me, and Reverend Reese, I want you to hear me now.
Miss Panther, give it back to me.
When the daughters went at God, this racist KKK wizardess, she calls herself the wizardess, you know? It's the female version of the Grand Wizard. She's the wizard. She's a self-proclaimed wizardess. Well, I gotta say it here real quick. When they tried to get a monument property on public land for the KKK, the first Grand Wizard of the KKK. Okay, please, I'm gonna say it real quick now. Fighting Rose Terrain read the hater in Selma because of this work. She led a movement to block this KKK monument. I did an investigation. I pretended that I was a white man with throat cancer. I set up a false ID called Alden James. It's a Celtic name. I researched it. And I communicated with Pat Godwin for over 3 months. And I was able to send a white student that I mentored into one of the KKK birthday parties for ours. And he was able to take pictures. We presented this bill of no rights, and that long communication was passed to every member of the Selma City Council and the mayor. And then I took Mary Louisa, the daughter of Val Louisa, before the city council to ask them not to deed this land to the KKK. Mayor, what's his name? Handkerchief, what?
Evans.
Mayor Evans. He attacked Mary Louisa. It broke my heart. It breaks my heart that we have black elected officials who will sit down and give approval for a KKK monument to be built in Selma, Alabama. We have to do something. We have to stand together and we need to squash out the plan. Thank you.
So we clearly see that there are battles yet to be fought. I'd like to turn our attention to Judge John Hulett Jr. His father was a key organizer with SNCC in the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, later Lowndes County Freedom Party, and but you were involved. You were a youngster, and so I'd like you to talk about your understanding of the role of black political organizing arising out of the voting rights campaign, and place that into some type of context for us.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm John Hulett. My dad was John Hulett.
Strong man.
At the time, but I want Mr. Miles right here, because he was one of my workers. We worked together, Fanny, Jake Williams. I think I didn't know he was going to, okay. We were students at the time.
Yeah.
We were students. And I was talking to Fanny, I said, how did we get around? They dropped us off in communities in Lowndes County, and we would go through and talk to people about registering to vote and voting. But she brought this up, and I'm gonna tell you, I got this. This is what it was back in '66. It's the rooster, and what we did, this came up, now SNCC helped organize this, but it was the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. This is what we put out to our people, trying to get them to vote. And it's really a whole story, and asking questions and stuff like that in this book. I just got one and I'm keeping it. But we was asking the question, and I ask people now, if you was in a corner, what would you want to protect you, this rooster or a cat? See, it's common sense. But our people, I'm going to put it this way, Lowndes County is different for some reason. And I don't know, I can't figure it out. I've been trying and trying. other people's ice is still colder than ours. And I talk to people, and for some reason, we just satisfied. I mean, I look at, we got black people in office, but we don't have the right black people in office. Just like you can put, see, let me tell you a story I always say. If you're gonna hang me, you're gonna hang me by my neck tomorrow morning. It don't matter to me whether you're black or white if you're finna hang me.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So it don't matter if the person is black, if they still gonna hang you, they're not doing any good. Mm-hmm. But this freedom organization, let me go back to it started, and we campaigned, and we worked, and we talked to people. We would go to black people's houses and sit there and talk with them, begging them to vote. And they would say, I'm not voting for no cat. You know, stuff like this. So what the Freedom Party did, what we did in Lowndes County, the next year, we did away with the cat. We did away with the cat. We came up with the NDPA. And I think that's what all the blacks and the black devils came in office on the NDPA, National Democratic Party of Alabama. And if I think about it now, we should have stayed on it. Because the Democratic Party didn't want us because we didn't have, they raised the amount of the registration fee when you want to run for the sheriff from 50 to 500, board education from 5 to 100 to keep us from getting in. So we couldn't afford the money. That's when we came up with the NDPA party. And in 1968, we got people elected to the small seats. We had, what you call it, people, you write a ticket and you go, and they go to these people and pay it. They used to have them all over the council. Just of the peace. Just of the peace. That means you gonna pay it. So in 1970, when we stayed with this, and that's when we got our first 3 blacks elected. But and I graduated from high school and left, went to college in Birmingham, Miles College. Then I left there and went to the military. I come back and I'm thinking, you know, because Lowndes County had one organization. We didn't. Everybody was together. All the black folk were together. When we went to a mass meeting, you had a line, and we didn't have any problem. No black person was ever killed or hurt in Lowndes County. Now we had 2 whites killed, but no black, because we were ready, and I'm still ready to fight. I don't mind fighting. I tell people that now. I'm not a violent person, but I'm not going to take the stuff that people took. I'm not going to take it. You know. But we organized, and we went to. I mean, we had guns. I enjoyed it. When Rick told me, I enjoyed myself. At night, we had to sit up and wait, because they say, we come and get John Hulett. And we sit out at night, line up. The road was a 2-mile dirt road, one-way in. And then we wanted somebody to come. Nobody would show up. Nobody. But we was waiting. We was waiting on this kind of stuff. We didn't mind fighting the Lowndes County. And let me tell you, when Valerie Russo got killed on Highway 80, I mean, you know, see, in Selma, you knew you had the sheriff there. You know, but in Lowndes County, all white folks was the police. So you know, what I'm saying is, all of them had badges. They had badges, so they had a right to shoot. So what you gonna do? At least you all knew you had your one sheriff that was gonna do things. In Lowndes County, it was totally different. That's why we stayed together. When Johnson Daniels got killed in Hammond, August '65, they did a sit-in. Sneak with them. They did a sit-in in Fort Deposit. Left Fort Deposit. They got arrested. They brought them to the jail in a dump truck. On the back of the dump truck, brought them in, put them in the jail on the back. I mean, it was hot, no air conditioning, nothing. It was in August. Put them on the back. Here's Tony Cole, the white man there, with his badge. Goes to the store. The store's right around the corner from the jail. Knowing when they get out of jail, they got to go get something to drink. He's sitting in the jail in the store waiting. When Jonathan walks to the door and comes in, boom. And Morris Wilson, he got shot. I mean, go to court, not guilty. I mean, same way with Valerie, not guilty. And I remember writing some things when I was little, and my dad told me never good again. I was at the typewriter, I was typing, Tone Cole was a murderer and this, that, that. And there were people, for some reason our folks, Lord, we let God take care of things. And back then I didn't understand it. But they were saying, don't worry about it. That God's going to handle all of it. And I can see that today, but I still believe that God wants us to do something. God has never called anybody that's not doing anything. Now, what I want to say to the young folks today is, what we talking about now 50 years ago, That's in the past. We got some history to be made now.
That's
We
right.
got history to be made right now. We got things that's happening right now that we're not doing anything about. We are all satisfied. We won't go and vote, and especially people that won't vote are young people. You know, I tell people, you crazy. I wish the cotton fields would come back so they can see exactly what's in life. Because that seems to be the only thing we care about. Hey, I'm free. I do what you're not free. If you think you're free, just go out and try doing some things that you think you're free to do and see where you end up in jail. And even at the University of Alabama, I see, you know, we run to these white universities and go to school, and we do, I mean, fine, that's what you want to spend your money on, but these are the same people. Look at Oklahoma. These are the same people that's still doing the same thing, but they're doing it in a different way. In Lowndes County now, 75% black. We can't get a district judge that's black. You know what they do? Come around and they'll pick their one or two, like they just do a long time ago, and give them something, and they're gonna campaign as never before for that person to keep a black from getting in. And I don't understand how we can say we are free when we're still doing the same thing that we've been doing for the last 50 years. We hadn't changed anything. All the money is in their hands. We are not starting a business, black folks, children in college. When I went to college, I didn't know what to major in. I majored in political science, but I didn't know. You all know where the money is. All you got to do is major in things, start some business. Get some black things from business started and start raising money. That's the only thing white folks understand, is money. But in 1986, I became mayor of Hayward, first black mayor. The only thing those white folks were worried about was the money. I took the money from their bank and put it in the community bank. I got the national letter I've got in my life. Then 2 weeks later, I get another letter, apologize. Because they realized, hey, he didn't take all the money, he took the money for the payroll, we got the biggest money. Then I took it all. but that's what they understand, they don't understand other things. But the Freedom Organization, we were, in Lowndes County, we were strong. But I can't understand now, we can't get the people together. We can't get them to come together. I call them, here I am, probate judge, I call a meeting with black elected officials. And I know some of the blacks that I was right, I knew they wasn't coming. I called for a meeting. Let's get together to talk, to see what can we do to make the county better. Even let people know what you do in your office. I had 3 people show up. And I know what happened is the whites told, see, they already tell them don't fool with me. But I don't mind that. You don't have to fool with me. You're gonna end up back in the cotton field anyway, doing what you're doing. But what I try to tell people is, why didn't they fight the whites? They are already organized. They already know exactly what they want to do. They already know what's going to happen in the next election. They got their person already set aside. And when they have their meetings, election meetings, they will invite us because they know exactly. All they can do in Lowndes is get, they already got it figured out. They got 20% white, and then you got 30% black. They know not going to vote. Then they get 20% of the black. So that's 50% plus 1. They win the election. It's so simple. They already know this. We got to learn how to get up. I wish, I'm telling y'all this now, I wish we could cut out food stamps, cut out these checks where they get these $600 money. Them are slave money. Because what they do, you sit down once a month and wait on a check to come for $500, $600 to play dumb. Won't go and vote. Well, they say if I vote, they might cut my check off. It ain't doing no good no way. It just keeps you in the hole. That's all it is. You don't even go to work. So we got to learn how to, I know I'm talking about other things, but I get carried away when I start talking about the things that we need to do as black folks. So if we can just forget about what the people did and don't forget what they did, but I'm going to tell you, my daughter, I got 2 daughters, I can guarantee you, they will never miss vote. I don't care where they are. I was in the military when I have never missed voting since I was 18 years old. And I'm not going to miss vote. If I have to do absentee, I don't mind doing absentee. I don't care about what people say. You know, we talk about Lowndes County absentee. Yeah, we're going to get absentee because we know our people. And when they're sick or they need it, we go out and help. All right, thank you.
I'm going to open up the floor for questions. We have Mukasa Dada, Connie Tucker, and Judge Hulett. I'm going to open up the floor for questions and dialogue. Feel free to inquire along a different line or the same line of thinking. Do I have any questions?
Judge Hulett,
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the justices of the peace. I represented your dad
I got your book.
when he filed suit, which was a precursor to the end of the justice of the peace system throughout the state of Alabama. Hulett versus Julian is the style of the case. The other thing is, California and the guys in California, they claim to the name
Black Panther.
Black Panther that originated in Lowndes County.
That's right.
Stokely Carmichael, George Green,
George Green.
and guy who died about 2 years ago.
Bob Man.
Bob Man, Jane Foreman.
Yes. No, Bob Man.
Man.
The local organization had no nickname. And it was suggested that they needed to be, the party needed to have a name.
Symbol.
And Stokely said that Bob looked like a Black Panther. And so they adopted the Black Panther as the symbol for the Lowndes County Party. It migrated to California,
That's
but
right.
it started
Lowndes County.
in Haines, in Lowndes County.
You want to speak to that?
Well, let me say, it's something I want to make sure I say that. When the organization, when it started, Freedom Organization started, I can remember I was in church on the fourth Sunday in February, and I heard our pastor, he's from Selma, Reverend Harrison, said, you might as well get ready because it's coming. I didn't know what he was talking about. But anyway, that when he got ready to leave, my dad and a couple more deacons had escorted him because the whites were coming through looking for him. So they had escorted him to Highway 80, and he never come back to the church after that again to preach. I just thought about that then. When the organization started, my dad had a job. He was working for Alabama Power. And a lot of people, they don't understand. He quit his job and started working for Freedom Organization. He got paid $25 a month. And that was, I think he said $20 a week. I'm saying that would have helped. $25 a month. And in '65, we boycotted Central High School. It was because it was all black school. At that time it was called Lowndes County Training School. Trying to get into the white school. We had 5 people that got into the white school. You had to be in a certain grade to get over there. You had to be in the 9th, 10th, or 11th grade, or the first grade to get in. So they wouldn't allow us to go. But I stayed out of school that year and picked cotton. My granddad had 2 acres of cotton, and I picked that cotton the whole year. And I remember Bob and Stokely used to come by, and I was getting paid for picking, by the way, 2 cents a pound. And I picked that cotton, and I didn't mind it. You know, I think about that. I was in the field by myself, and I picked it. But I did, and when I got through picking the cotton, we go to the school, and it was an intense thing we had at the school. When we said boycott the school, you couldn't buy John Jackson was our leader at the time. You couldn't buy, you go in there and buy milk if you want. We knock it out your hand. You don't, nothing, don't buy anything. And finally we end up getting Haynesville High School, which was all white, with air conditions and everything else in the 60s. And we end up over there, and then the whites left and paid the board education $1 and got a school there set aside and made it Lowndes County.
You have a question? Question. Dr. Brown.
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you to each one of you for the work that you do. Particularly today, I am appreciative of all of you in one form or another mentioning the importance of Black institutions as it relates to civil rights. It boggles my mind how, mainstream voices purport to tell the story of civil rights and fail to mention the connection to Black institutions. So thank you all for that. My question is, on Saturday, President Obama was critical of persons who do not exercise their right to vote, but he failed to mention the removal of Section 5 from the Voting Rights Act. And he also failed to mention many of the state-sanctioned measures that have been taken to make it difficult for people to vote. And so my question is, do any of you all have a response to that in terms of his failure to mention those things?
Right now, the Selma to Montgomery March is going on. After the rally on the state capitol on Friday, they're going to start a voting rights caravan to Washington, D.C., with rally stops in every major capital city along the way. The state rallies will focus on the repressive state laws. And when they get to D.C., they're going to be rallying at the Senate and the House buildings, demanding that Congress reinstates the pre-clearance requirements to the Voting Rights Act. For y'all who do not know, the U.S. Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. Pre-clearance means that if you want to change your district, gerrymander, do whatever, if you have a history of voting discrimination, you have to get it cleared first by the federal government. And for y'all who do not know, the case was Sheldon, from Sheldon County, Alabama. We stood by and we did nothing. We did nothing, and we got to stop it. That county, once, but I'm busy now, so I may have my facts a little wrong on this. I know it, I'm just busy because I haven't gotten enough rest. But the first time a Black was elected to the council there, they went and gerrymandered it so he couldn't win again. So that was when, I think it was the NAACP Legal Defense Fund filed a suit about that. No, they contacted the federal government and the Justice Department made them not do it again. And then Sheldon County filed a suit against that action. So we lost it at the U.S. Supreme Court level, and there were thousands. We organized buses, but about 4 or 6 buses left the state of Alabama, organized by 5, it's red again. It went up to D.C., and we joined forces with the national organizations to do a demonstration in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, and it still didn't make a difference. That's why our vote is important, because the people who are on the Supreme Court are appointed by the president. If we don't vote, we lose. We go back.
Yeah, question. I just wanted to commend the 3 of you, but my question is for Mukasa. I'm just curious to know your personal history. Where are you from? Where were you born? And secondly, approximately how many times have you been arrested?
I was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee. My parents came out of North Alabama, Sheffield, Muscle Shoulder, a little place called Leaton. They were cotton pickers, and I used to go down there when I was a little young man, even before teenage, and pick cotton or chop cotton. And I complained to my mama that I ain't chopping cotton from cane to cane and making $3 a day. We make $3 a day. She said, shoot. She said, shoot, I made a quarter a day. And so I joined the movement in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I had the distinction of leading the first ride, rebellion, bricks and balls, and busting folks upside the head that was hitting us. And King and Dr. King and NAACP and all of them rushed to the town. And when they rushed, King said, you two mills will be with me, but let me hook you up with an organization that's being formed called SNCC. And CT and King introduced me to SNCC. And then I went to SNCC. I was part of the All-Betty movement. I was part of Birmingham, Selma. But again, SNCC had organization in probably 100 different areas. And I was able to be one of the little, I guess, troubleshooters for SNCC. Otherwise, be able to go and convince people to march, demonstrate, go to jail, and what have you.
How did SNCC folks convince you or to adopt nonviolence?
When I went to town, matter of fact, I tell you. I tell you.
He thought you for a while.
I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we led a rebellion. And we threw bricks and balls and all that. So the nonviolent top folks from the NAACP, all of them, they rushed to Chattanooga and called a mass meeting, and us, a lot of students. I was dropout. And we all went to the meeting, and they had this little guy stand up and tell us about letting people hit you and spit on you, and he even said we're gonna slap you, and he was saying, you know, slap people. And I was sitting in the audience, and I looked, what? I said, let me slap you. And he tried to embarrass me. Well, yeah, come on up and slap me. Oh, I hit that poor man so hard. And from that day on, I led nonviolent movements. And nonviolent people were extremely brave people.
Yes.
They went up against everything. And died, fought dog, bombs, but they were brave people. And that, so we did that. And then I had the opportunity, one of the things that I had over the rest of the people, I was a great speaker, not great speaker, but I was a speaker, I had a big mouth, and the college kids, they didn't speak. I think I imitated preachers from the early on, so I got to bring Reverend Ricks and SNCC, and then fortunately I had an opportunity on many occasions to be on the program with Dr. King and what have you. And in Selma, when they passed an injunction saying don't march, Dr. King was explaining, and I think SLC wanted to, you know, the injunction. They sort of wanted to honor the injunction, and SNCC was saying we want to honor the injunction. We're ready to fight. We're ready to die. We're ready to take it to the street. Let's go fight. And that SNCC, well, they were saying, the crowd was saying no injunction. SNCC was on there, and they had me on the porch talking to 1,000 people that was around the church. March, march, march. And I think that sort of pushed them to agree to march, but we didn't know that they had made somewhat of a compromise where they would march across the bridge and turn around. And when they marched across the bridge and turned around, SNCC was very upset. And y'all know, I think you would tell them that SNCC and Dr. King, or SNCC and SLC, on tactical measures, we had disagreements. And that's when SNCC broke away and said, we going to Montgomery and attack the Capitol building. And we left the march and came to Montgomery, and we took over Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, had a sit-in in there, we took it over. And then the folk went in there and they cut the lights out on us. They closed the water trying to get us out the church because we were using the church to demonstrate at the Capitol. And then Foreman told me to come over here and get students from Alabama State. I came over here and stood in the cafeteria on the table for my first time, and Dorothy Frazier and Donna Smith, Doug Smith, and a whole bunch of them walked out with me. and we went up and we demonstrated, but they eventually stopped us up there at Jackson and High Street.
That's right, Jack.
And we stayed there for days, and then eventually I have this right here I want to show y'all. This is where they beat us, and these are a lot of Alabama State students. You can pass that around to people. And this is where they beat us when the Alabama State students marched down the street, and we made it back to Jackson and High Street. Here come the police around the corner, and they were attacking us again. And at some point when we was here at Alabama State, the rallying and what have you, the police came on the campus shooting. And when they shot, they were shooting right by Dorothy Frazier, and Dorothy Frazier fainted. And when Dorothy Frazier fainted, they were trying to catch me, but they didn't know what to find. They couldn't even figure me out who I was. And when they see me, I think I look too dumb to be whatever they thought I ought to be. And so when they started shooting on the campus, I came out to the crowd, the students, and got out there and said, y'all done did messed up now. Y'all done shot this student. And Dorothy was laying there unconscious like, and I started feeling for the wound. And Dorothy and the police was around me, and Dorothy had fainted, she wasn't shot. Uh-oh. And I started trying to back off, and all of them grabbed me, and I ended up in Kilby prison. Me and a bunch of college students. Would you go to prison that day?
We don't argue with you.
Anyway,
I didn't go that
but
day.
anyway, you had a little warrior girl on the campus named Donna Smith.
That's right.
And Donna Smith played a major role.
Oh, she sure did.
And we took over the school. We took over Levi Watkins. Now I took over the school. We went over to his house. I remember one night we all slept on his porch. But we had big demonstrations here. And school, they weren't violent against us. They didn't beat us up and what have you. Had an old policeman named Mr. Reynolds. And Mr. Reynolds was a nice guy, but we used to give Mr. Reynolds a hard time, but he's really a nice guy. But so Alabama State, we got beat with horses. And these are the pictures. I guess I just passed these over here. I ain't saying, but these are the pictures. And then when they beat us with the horses, the same thing happened. But SNCC and Alabama State students played a major role with Tuskegee students. And SNCC had its own personality here. We called in for hundreds of people to come in. And we had people to come in, white people from colleges all over to come in. And we demonstrated right here in Montgomery. And to answer your question, how many times I've been to jail, I really don't know. If I tell you how many times I had to run from the police and get away, that was a whole lot of that. And, also, Mr. Hulett here, his daddy was a warrior. When we came down there, he said, y'all need guns. And Mr. Hulett gave us rifles and guns. When we go on those plantations, because it was known for being, they had a sheriff down there named Luck Jackson, deputy sheriff, and he was known for killing young brothers. And we were saying we were going to bring Luck Jackson down, but they gave us guns. We became known as the Black Panther Party in Lowndes County. That changed the whole face of the movement, because when young people around the world saw Lowndes County people down there with guns and standing up to white people that was coming to shoot at us and what have you, that brought in a whole nother element. And then the young people from other areas asked could they form chapters of the Black Panther Party, and that's where you got the Black Panthers for self-defense and what have you. And then what went on here led to the Black Power movement. But Lowndes County played a major role. And one of the last thing I want to say, that after we were here in Selma, and after we were here in Montgomery, and what have you, we now did research and saw Lowndes County there. It was like no different than South Africa. And it was supposed to be so dangerous to go in, but when we chose to go into Lowndes County, we definitely had to arm ourselves just to save our lives. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
You did good.
Are there any other questions? We have time for maybe one more, two more.
My question is for Casa Dada. You mentioned going to different states and regions and starting a SNCC organization. What was the kind of criteria that you all were looking for presidents and executive board members of that region?
Anybody who stand up and say, I ain't scared of white folks, was qualified. And we had people that sometimes they were great businessmen, lawyers, some were peasants, some couldn't read and write. Matter of fact, there's a guy in Georgia, his name is J.C. Murray. And J.C. Murray was worked on the farm for the white folks and all that.